Hello everyone, this is Tim, Another Dimension Drake Wayne. Wait, when did he get so hyphenated? By LialeeEderian. Read by Insect Overlord. This fic has about 13,000 words and 4 chapters, and is rated for general audiences. Here's the summary. Batman is not expecting another kid, so when a certain young man shows up in his cave, they're left scrambling for answers. Luckily, Tim Drake is apparently happy to give them. Too happy. Tim, on the other hand, is just trying to get home, more or less. Master Bruce, Alfred's voice came over the comms. There is a situation. Batman swung to a stop on one of the rooftops, called for the Batmobile, and pinched the bridge of his nose. He could already feel a migraine coming on. Is it dangerous? Nightwing asked, from the other end of town. On my way with Batwing. Really, Father, Robin announced, coming to a stop on Batman's rooftop as well. You ought to look into better security. The house gets broken into quite easily. Batman just groaned and jumped out, gliding to his car as Robin followed. On our way, Alfred, he said. What's wrong? Alfred seemed to choose his words carefully. Your son is in the cave, sir. He almost crashed the car, and he could hear Nightwing sputter through the comms, while Robin tore off his mask and glared at his father. You have another blood, son? He demanded. Why was I not made aware of this? Bruce? Nightwing asked. Batwoman snorted, and her voice crackled. A family spat, then, she muttered. Need me there? Got a date to get to. Batman grit his teeth and wondered why he'd amassed such a collection of children, and why. Exactly, there was another one sitting in his house. No need, he growled and sped up the car. We'll handle it. Batwing seemed to laugh. Yeah, got it, he said. I'll just drop off Nightwing then. The comm link shut down. Batman's hands curled tighter around the steering wheel. So you didn't know about this son either, Damien said loudly. Of course not. Damien, he warned. Damien crossed his arms and huffed. What? Can I not even comment on this, Father? No. They drove the rest of the way in silence. Right outside of the cave, Nightwing quickly slipped into the car, and the cave opened. Damien put his mask back on, and the silence became much more focused, intentional. The car stopped, and the three got out to the sight of Alfred hovering awkwardly to the side, which was a feat in and of itself, and a young, black-haired boy, older than Damien, typing away at the computer rapidly. What are you doing here? Batman asked, voice slow and dark. The boy didn't seem impressed. In fact, he didn't even turn. I know I'm supposed to be resting, he complained, but come on. I came down here for, anyway, the Bat computer had been reset to before Jason. I honestly can't believe that happened. Whoever was able to get through Barb's firewalls is a genius. They left Damie's profile intact, though? He shook his head and whirled around. Not that it matters. What I mean to say, he blinked. Dick, what are you doing in Gotham? Thought you were in Bloodhaven this weekend. Nightwing's eyes widened, and he snuck a look at Batman, who still looked impassive. The boy shook his head. God, my mind's messing up. He looked at Alfred pleadingly. One more cup of coffee, Alfred, please? Alfred raised his eyebrow, imperviously, which seemed to be enough. Fine, he grumbled. Then he turned back to the three and frowned. No Jason? Or Steph? Robin took that chance to leap forward. Pretender! He shouted. I will not let you sit here and lie. The boy, he looked distinctly unimpressed, and as soon as Robin struck one blow, he parried, spinning around and using his chair as leverage to jump up and away, before picking up a spare pair of Dick's eczema sticks and rushing forward as well. He and Robin met in the middle, Robin's sword falling short on the boy's shoulder, after which he roared and threw it away for hand-to-hand combat. Nightwing wondered whether he should intervene, and decided it wasn't dangerous anyway. The boy looked like he was only playing. Plus, Robin was getting his butt kicked, the little shoot. Talk about 2 birds with 1 stone. Of which the second bird was the much more serious understanding of a new kid's fighting style. Enough! Batman roared and threw a batarang, making it strike the ground between the two and forcing them apart. Robin growled. The boy shrugged. He attacked first, he said easily. Though not at your best, are you, demon brat? Robin sneered. Batman jumped forward in front of Robin, and then narrowed his eyes and glared, marking up an impressive figure. Watching from the side, Nightwing was decidedly not intimidated. Then again, he'd known Bruce for years. It'd be pathetic if he was. But the kid was acting the same way. Who are you, and what are you doing here? Batman asked loudly. How did you find this place? The boy blinked. Oh, shoot, he said, his face falling. I'm in another parallel dimension? Bruce is gonna kill me. Nightwing couldn't help the snort. The boy automatically turned over. Makes sense why you're not in Bloodhaven, he muttered. Though I'd hoped I'd be here. I guess that's a no-go. Either, he groaned. And I only took off a month of free time. Served me right, it's spent across the universe. You're saying the multiverse theory is correct? Batman asked, and there was a mixture of acceptance and wariness in his voice that weirded Nightwing out, since Bruce was never so accepting. Not this fast, at least. Well, yeah, he said. Not that you'd believe me. He tilted his head. Unless you've started researching the concept? He looked hopeful. Batman didn't reply. The boy brightened. Great, he said. Obviously, you're going to have to test me. I'm guessing you already know who I am? Nightwing came forward. You do look familiar, he admitted. The boy nodded. Timothy Drake, he introduced. I live next door. He winced. Well, in my world, at least. Aha! Robin announced. So you are not the blood son. Timothy snorted. No, Damien, he said. You're the only biological son, don't worry. And therefore the only rightful heir, he asserted. Nightwing groaned. Hadn't they gotten over that part? Oh, don't be such an imbecile, Grayson. Just because you're not the heir. You brat, Nightwing shouted. There's something called secret identities. Drake obviously knows who we are. That doesn't mean... Wow, Timothy said, looking odd. You guys sound more like Damien and me than Dick and Damien. Nightwing was instantly on alert. What do you mean? He asked. Timothy shrugged. Well, he said, you're a lot more huggy, he smirked. Nightwing sputtered. That is absurd, Damien refuted. Grayson is merely a placeholder for my position. And yet you are exactly the same, Timothy breathed, and then shook his head. Tests? He asked Batman, who was sitting down in front of the computer and typing. Batman twisted his mouth. Timothy Drake is with his parents in Peru, he said. Timothy blinked. Figures, he said, looking to the slightest bit wistful. He shook his head. They're gone in my dimension, he admitted. You adopted me after they died. Batman narrowed his eyes. There must have been many who wanted to adopt the heir of Drake's fortune, he countered. The "why did I" went unsaid, but not unheard. Well, I was obviously already Robin by then, Timothy said. You, or well, my Bruce, I guess, figured it was easier. He shifted on his feet, his eyes flickering. I'm emancipated now, not that it matters. Batman frowned. You're 14. Timothy raised an eyebrow. 17, actually, since this world is weirdly off track, but so what? Bruce glared. So not even an adult, he insisted. Why did my alternate self allow you to be emancipated? Well, Nightwing thought, this sounds a little too much like a dad. The Dimension Traveler scoffed. Like you can control my life, he said. Besides, I emancipated when you were gone. Timothy, Batman began. The boy makes a face. Tim, he corrects. Tim, Batman said, but everyone could tell that his momentum was gone. He sighed. Fine. He motioned towards the table at the back of the cave, where Alfred tended to the more difficult wounds. Blood. Tim hopped off the raised platform without protest. I can understand why I wasn't there, he said conversationally, as he was strapped into the chair and attached to various machines. He looked unconcerned. But where is Jason? Bruce faltered only the slightest bit. Who's Jason? Tim blinked. Red Hood? Robin too? The kid who almost jacked the tires off the Batmobile? Nightwing burst out laughing. Wow, he sounds like a character. Tim huffed. You have no idea. He shook his head. I wonder what happened to him since you didn't take him in. He mused. Batman grunted. Robin frowned, though, and it looked more like a pout. Father, you seem to have an egregious problem with adopting children. Tim burst out laughing. Oh, Damie, he said, that's not even all of it. This time, Batman really did falter. He yanked off his cowl and stared at Tim with wide eyes. How many children do I have? He asked, and Nightwing wanted to laugh at the almost desperation. Still, he took the man's actions as a cue to shake off his mask, too. Tim smirked. I would ask you in what capacity, but I have a feeling that question might trigger you a little too much. Bruce stared, mouth slightly agape. Tim shrugged, as much as he could with his bindings. Obviously, Dick's the oldest, but after him is Jason. You adopted him when Dick almost moved out, I think? He shrugged. I'm the third, sort of. Well, third as I came after Jason. His expression darkened for the slightest second. But I'm not the eldest after Jay. Cass is, but she came later. He hummed. Or maybe she came first, since you didn't adopt me until later? He shook his head. That's everyone you've adopted. And everyone else? Dick asked cheerfully, because this was his chance to break Bruce, and who didn't want that? Damien scoffed. There are already too many children, he protested. I cannot condone these actions. Relax, demon brat, Tim drawled. No one's taking your position. He laughed. Though I doubt you'll be able to do better than me. What did you say? He growled. You heard me, Tim taunted. I'm better at running Rain Enterprises than you ever could be. That company is my birthright. It's a meritocracy, brat. Damien leapt at him, only to be caught by Dick. No can do, kiddo, he said. Timmy's a little too occupied to fight back right now. Tim grinned. Man, this isn't bad, he said. No Jason and Damien Dick refusal to be friendly. What else? He laughed. Anyways, as I was saying, he continued, answering Dick. Barbara's practically a part of the family, too. Gordon? Bruce asked, brows furrowed. And the machine was working on, having somewhat relaxed, whirling to life around them. Wait, Barbara is a vigilante too? Dick asked, but she was so straight-laced. Tim raised his eyebrows. She was Batgirl, he explained, though he looked a little confused. Robin perked up. This Gordon, do you think she might be Batgirl of this world as well, Drake? What, a Batgirl's popped up? She didn't agree to Batwoman's mentorship offer, Dick muttered. Tim brightened. Kate's here? He asked. Haven't seen her for a while. Dick hummed. She and Batwing decided to stay out of this family matter. Batwing? Tim asked. Batwing doesn't exist in your world? No, they might be under another name? Dick blinked and looked at Bruce in askance. The man cleared his throat. You are Timothy Drake, he said, holding up a small device, which probably held the blood test results. That's what I've been saying for a while, Tim agreed. Am I free? Bruce frowned. Tim seemed to take that as agreement, because suddenly there was a pop, and he was shimmying out of the straps. Damien raised an eyebrow. Not bad, Drake, he said, though somewhat reluctantly. Your techniques are sufficient. Tim snorted. They ought to be, considering Roz was the one of the people who taught me. Bruce began to cough, and Damien's eyes went wide. Grandfather is alive? He asked, his voice low and demandingly vulnerable. Tim frowned. Of course he is, he said. Roz has a Lazarus pit. Damien looked away. Bruce sighed. He was too far away, he said. The wounds were too much. Damien grit his teeth. It was all that traitor's fault, he shouted. Deathstroke! He broke off and stormed a few feet away, slumping and stomping the ground. Tim continued to frown. That's not a funny joke, he warned. Roz doesn't just die, he said. Goodness knows I've tried enough times, he muttered the last part under his breath, probably not intending for them to hear, but Damien perked up anyways, his glare edged with rage. How dare you? My grandfather was a great man. Tim scowled. A madman, more like it. You don't get to. Damien, Bruce warned. Damien stopped shouting, though his glare spoke volumes. Dick, on the other hand, focused on his apparent little brother from another dimension. The truth be told, he liked this kid way more than Bruce's brat, who he apparently liked a lot in the other dimension. Yeah, no, not thinking about that. Why would you try to kill him? He asked carefully. What about Batman's code of no killing? Tim smiled. This time was cold. Let's just say he was the one who instigates all our interactions. Damien scoffed. Like my grandfather would pay attention to you, he spat. Tim shrugged nonchalantly. I wish, he said. Then he spun around, saw Bruce open his mouth, and began speaking over him. Other than Babs, there's Stephanie. She was Robin for like a week before Bruce benched her. Dick hid a smile. He was sensing a pattern. Though her role as Robin kind of mixes with her alter egos as Spoiler and Batgirl. The Spoiler sounds like a stupid name, Damien grumbled. Wasn't Barbara Batgirl? Dick asked over him. Tim nodded. Kind of a legacy title, like Robin. Dick owed, though the Robin part still irked. But if his counterpart had managed to live with it, he guessed he could too. And I guess that's about it, Tim rubbed the back of his neck. So, Batwing? Bruce placed his arms on the side and stared at him. Before I answer, he said carefully. Yes? Why were you acting? Dick stilled. Wait, what? At the same time, Damien perked up, similarly confused, though Dick would bet he'd never admit it later. Tim tucked a lock of hair behind his ear and then lowered his hand. When did you notice? He asked, tenser and more serious than before. Bruce shrugged. I started suspecting it around the time you said, couldn't believe it, he repeated, pulling out the air quotes. Tim couldn't seem to help a wry smile. So, the beginning, then, he said. The beginning. So you were lying, Damien declared triumphantly. About not knowing this was a parallel dimension? No shucks, demon brat. Tim shook his head. Kind of hard not to. Our mansion has way too many pictures of all the kids. His eyes flickered to the uniform display case. And Jason's costume case isn't here. Dick figured that one was probably more important than any of them could guess. And everything else? He asked, a bit nervous, because even though it had been less than an hour, he was starting to feel a little attached. A huge family, with more people who could get on Bruce's case, buffers between the demon brat, wow, that was catchy. And him? Bring it on. Tim's gaze seemed to soften the very slightest bit, before it caught Damien and hardened again. But his voice was simple and nice. All truth, he said. I have a lot of siblings. He sighed and leaned one thigh against the operating table. Look, I'm sorry for trying to do that, but I had to... He broke off. Had to what exactly? Doesn't matter. Bruce cut in, gruffy. You've proven your identity. I don't doubt you could tell us other things about us as well. Tim smiled. More or less. Dick frowned. Did Bruce know something? Bruce nodded. Good. My counterpart is coming to get you? Tim winced. Well, he said. Bruce's brows furrowed. Tim, he said warningly. Tim pouted. I changed universes and still can't get out of your scoldings, he grumbled out, but relaxed. He was off-world, actually, and I wasn't lying when I said I was benched, so yes, they'll come looking for me, but not for a while. Dick frowned. But even if he's away, he pointed out, shouldn't your siblings be looking? Tim's smile turned the same cold brittle it had been before. Emancipated, remember? But it's a long story, he said, but it'll be fine. I have plans. He shrugged. I know how to build a transporter. I'll just need a boost of dimensional energy from Raven. Who's Raven? Damien asked. Dick exchanged a look with Bruce. They had been planning to send the kid there. Damie hasn't gone through the whole Teen Titans crescendo yet? Tim asked. Damien frowned more. Teen Titans? He asked. Who in damnation are they? Bruce sighed and massaged his neck. Teenage heroes, he said grudgingly. I believe it pertinent not to inform you until you required their help. I do not require their aid, he retorted. I am superbly self-sufficient. If anything, Grayson would require help. Well, if it makes you feel better, Tim offered. Most Robins have been a part of the Titans. Dick was with Starfire and the original teams. Then they grew up, and Jason got the next batch. My teammates were Cone, Bart, Cass, and he faltered, then swallowed and continued. Your counterparts also took part in Titans. I work better alone, he sneered. Sure, Tim said, losing interest. Why do you need Raven? Dick asked. I thought she could only use magic. Tim raised an eyebrow. No Trigon bullcrap yet? He asked, then shrugged. Magic can help cross dimensions too. Constantine is particularly adept with the spell for hell in our case. Bruce perked up at the name. I've heard of him, he said. Tim nodded. But Raven is more accessible, he said, pointing over his shoulder at the screen. Bruce scowled. Yes, he said darkly, she is. Tim beamed forcefully. Great, he said. Now, I'll go enjoy the crepes Alfred said he was making. Okay, bye. He zipped away, effortlessly navigating through the cave setup. He's suspicious, Father, Damien said instantly as he disappeared. Bruce stalked forward, slumping in the seat Tim had vacated, and powered on the computer again. Dick sighed. Why don't you keep an eye on him then, demon brat? Damien. Damien nodded. I shall. If only so Pennyworth will not be brutally assassinated. Dick rolled his eyes, waited till he was gone as well, then turned to Bruce. What was that? He asked. Bruce didn't turn his way. What was what? Don't be obtuse, Dick snapped right back, feeling annoyed. I'm talking about you stopping Tim from explaining why he's acting. Bruce huffed. Be? Dick prompted. Bruce sighed. It was just a feeling, he said. While I was getting the computer calibrated and running the DNA check, I found what Tim was looking at while we were gone. And what is that? Us, he admitted. But more than that. It was those siblings he mentioned. Bruce began to massage the back of his neck. I think he was trying to see if we were trustworthy before he... Dick's eyes widened. What, even before he searched how to get back? Bruce nodded, his eyes dark. That's not counting the fact he didn't look his own counterpart up at all. Dick inhaled sharply. So he was surprised when you told him he was gone with his parents. And that didn't happen in his own world, Bruce agreed, which makes sense considering his actions. Dick frowned, but his eyes flickered to the stairs. When he was talking about his family, us, not coming for him, he seemed detached, alone. He swallowed. What if my counterpart is one of the ones who contributed to that? Bruce looked sad, but didn't deny it, and Dick felt even worse of that. It's possible, he agreed. It may be one of the reasons he was trying to see if we were trustworthy. The truth lanced through Dick harshly. He swallowed. Oh, he said. But, Batman added, he did tell us about them, he said, and he didn't wipe his searches from the computer, which I believe was easy to do with his skills, so it must be intentional. Something lightened. Really? Really. Dick nodded. Okay, he said. Want me to call Corey about Raven? Bruce nodded. I'll do more research on he winced, these kids. Dick began to snicker. Bruce rolled his eyes. All right, this concludes Chapter 1 of Tim Another Dimension Drake Wayne. Wait, when did he get so hyphenated? This is actually my first time reading this, reading it to you guys, and I think it sounds pretty interesting, and the next chapter will be up soon. Thank you so much for listening.